In my efforts to understand the APC's victory in Nigeria's 2015 elections, I traveled across Nigeria. I met with traditional rulers, I met with ordinary people in Adamawa State, in Bauchi State, in Gombe State. I met with elites in Abuja. I also presented preliminary findings from my research and my hypotheses in progress at institutes such as the Nigeria Institute for Strategic Studies and elsewhere. All told, I visited 10 different states and traveled over 1,300 kilometers. This included presentations before large audiences at the American University of Nigeria in Yola and at the University of Port Harcourt in Rivers State. First, it's important to understand the nature of the transition, which began when the dictator Sani Abacha died in 1998, thus ending a long period of military rule extending over 16 years. Certain features of the transition are well known. It was widely appreciated that the next presidential candidate needed to be a Yoruba because of a deep betrayal felt when presidential elections in 1993 had been nullified by the authoritarian regime and the presumed winner, Abiola, was sidelined. Also, there was a deep understanding that power would probably need to alternate between North and South, that there would be some sort of power shift, as it is widely referred to. But there are other features of the transition that I go into, including a dramatic rise in military spending, especially in the first 5 years after the transition. Also, while a number of firings and forced retirements of generals and military officials have been widely documented, I also uncovered through archival research a massive wave of promotions just before Obasanjo took the oath of office for the second time. I believe that these factors, along with other considerations such as impunity for human rights violations and difficulty pursuing anti-corruption work, suggest a kind of coup-proofing on the part of the incoming civilian regime and then the PDP as it came to power. This resulted in a sort of dual policy towards the military. On the one hand, trying to demobilize those in the military with political ambition, on the other hand, trying to keep the military happy. Over time, an important part of the analysis in Chapter 2 of the book points to an erosion of this understanding. One feature of this erosion, which I think has gathered a good deal of interest in Nigeria, is that the average age of the National Assembly in the House and the Senate increased in every single election since the transition. This is especially remarkable since Nigeria is one of the fastest growing populations in the world. There's a demographic gap between the age of the population and the people who represent them. A content analysis of 929 coded newspaper articles in Chapter 3 of the book shows that the economy and corruption, more than insecurity or any other issue, was the most emphasized issue in the campaigns. Also, importantly, the parties campaigned on different issues, implying that the opposition APC struck on an effective portfolio of issues. At its core, the book is about why the PDP lost in 2015. This was the first time a ruling party had ever lost an election in Nigeria's history. First, I look at politics at the elite level, including deals that were cut to facilitate the transition to civilian rule in 1999. Then, through a content analysis, I also look at what the political parties campaigned on. Second, at the state level, I look at electoral outcomes in order to explore how the economy and violence impact voting outcomes. Third, at an individual level, I look at what voters actually vote on. These point to three core sets of findings. First, the pact that facilitated the transition in 1999 fragmented elite alliances. Also at the elite level, parties campaigned on different issues. This is an important contribution to the way we understand political parties in Africa. Then, at the state level, I find that economic conditions were even more important in shaping outcomes than levels of violence. Finally, at the individual level, I find that people did, in fact, vote on the economy, much as the parties had primed them to do, but ethnicity still remains relevant and religion was highly influential. So, going into the 2015 elections, it was reasonable to expect Nigerians to want to vote on security or feelings of insecurity. Gallup conducted a poll in 2014 in which 67% of Nigerians said that the government was not doing enough to fight insecurity and terrorism. Then a year later, 95% of Nigerians said that they considered Boko Haram a major threat. And importantly, there were no differences between citizens in the North and the South at any significant level. Finally, and perhaps most importantly, in an open-ended survey commissioned by the US government, over 41% of Nigerians said that they considered security the top priority, with creating jobs only being a second priority in an open-ended question just before the elections. In my tests of a national insecurity hypothesis, I predict that the PDP will get more support in states with, first, lower levels of violence. Second, in states where survey respondents believe that extremist attacks will decrease if Goodluck Jonathan, the incumbent, is reelected. And then third, I predict that support for PDP will be stronger in states where survey respondents believe that extremist attacks will increase if Buhari is elected. The dependent variable, the outcome I'm looking at here, is the overall change in the PDP's vote share from 2011 until 2015. With regard to the first hypothesis, I find no systematic relationship. With regard to the second hypothesis about survey respondents who believe extremist attacks will decrease, under Jonathan, I find no systematic relationship. Under the third hypothesis, however, there's a highly significant statistical relationship that explains nearly half of the statistical model. I believe this result suggests that the PDP tried to mobilize voters based on fear. Importantly, for the literature on counterterrorism and the way we understand insurgency in electoral democracies, it didn't work.